Welcome back. Welcome back to Living in Mexico. I'm Ana Maria Salazar, and I want to thank all of you who've been joining us throughout the years. It's always an honor to share with you information, news, analysis about what's going on in Mexico, both in English and in Spanish. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. And as you know, one of the issues that we've been dealing throughout ever since we started broadcasting this show has to do with security issues in Mexico, crime in Mexico. It's always been an important issue to address, and because it's an issue that affects all of us who live in Mexico. Well, this week, the Secretary of Public Security presented some very interesting data that has to do with the situation of with data that is supposed to highlight that, according to the Secretary of Public Security, Rosicela Rodriguez, that crime in Mexico, in many of the more violent crimes, I would say, has gone down. She was very, very optimistic. She said that, for example, feminicides, the murder of women, feminicidios, as they call it in Spanish, has gone down 25.7%. She also pointed out that homicides has gone down since 2018, has gone 21.1%, and she gave more information and more data that seemed to, at least from the federal government's perspective, seems to show some optimism that crime rates in Mexico are going down. But there are a lot of question marks about not only the report that she presented this week, but also the way how they're analyzing and using this data. That's why I always appreciate today's guest. He's been joining us throughout the years. Joining us today is the General Director of the National Citizens Observatory, Francisco Rivas. Once again, I really appreciate you joining us, and I know you've been following this data very, very closely. Welcome to the show. What's your reaction to the data presented this week?
Well, Ana Maria, thank you for having me and the opportunity to talk with your audience. As you remember, few years ago, we as a civil organization push for have enough data to analyze and to understand what's going on in Mexico about the crime. And we agree that every single month, the 20th of every single month, we will receive the information of all the crimes that the prosecutor's office of the country investigate. And the first thing that I'm less happy is that right now we are not clear about what day they publish the information. Almost every single month they do late, and they present really late information. But this is not the only problem. Of course, it's a problem because the law says that they have to do it on 20, and if they don't respect, it means they don't respect the law. But by the other hand, they present data and they explain the data that is really different. What the data says is, if we analyze the January and February month, and we do, as we have to do it, comparing with January and February 2022, we find that the homicide is increased almost 4%, not decreasing 21%. But also, if we want to understand and we want to do a more complex analysis, if we compare the 51 month that we have right now with in this federal government, with the 51 month of the government of Peña, we have an increase of 50% of homicides. So it's not 21% less, it's 50% more. And if we compare with the government of Calderon, we have almost 100% more homicides in this specific administration than in the past. And this is not the only problem. We increase a lot the extortion. Extortion right now, for me, is the most important crime. If we talk about, in one hand, what provides resources for the organized crime, but by the other hand, extortion is one of the crimes that more affect the citizen, because of course we right now have a problem with drugs here in Mexico as well as in United States, and of course the cartels that they are focused in transport drugs to United States are a problem for both countries. But it's a national problem. It's a federal, and it's kind of security of the country, not the citizen. Extortion is a crime that affects especially the citizens. When we, for example, analyze the data that the Mexico Central Bank provides, the increase of price of a lot of products is part because we have a lot of extortion in the country. So the production of lemons, the production of chicken, of eggs, milk, the price of the beverages, beer, tobacco, the cigarettes, it's increased a lot because organized crime is involved in almost half of the country, and this is a huge problem. By the other hand, we have a huge problem with other kind of problems, crimes like human smuggling, human trafficking, but also the distribution and sales of drugs in our country. One of the problems of this strategy that this government claims is they understand that give money to the citizen is a prevention policy, and is not. One, because a prevention policy needs more than just give money to people. One of the most important things that we have to understand is when you give to adolescents, minors money, and you don't attach that kind of money with other kind of programs, we are seeing right now, and we are analyzing, this year we will publish this kind of data. Since we have this kind of money transferred to the underage, we saw increase the consumption of drugs and alcohol, because it's people, they are young people that they don't used to have this money. They every single month receive 200, 300, 400 US dollars, and they use for consume drugs and alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And by the other hand, we have a huge problem with the violation of human rights.
Right.
Do you know that United States just published a document, and they show a very concern about the situation of human rights here in Mexico.
In Mexico, yeah.
And it's true, because right now, if we analyze the data of the National Commission of Human Rights, we see an increase, a very huge increase of complaints of violation of human rights through the National Guard and the Army that right now is doing police job nationwide.
Let me ask you this, because this is a handful of information and that we need to kind of highlight. So these programs, according to the information you have, these programs by which the government does cash transfers to young people have not necessarily translated in improving their quality of life, or giving them or providing them more opportunities, or assuring that they stay in school. The information that you're finding out is that they are basically using the money and to buy to buy drugs? I mean, is that what we're talking about? So we are going to see by the end of this administration an increase of in drug
Consume.
consumption. Wow, that is very that's very interesting. Now, the other part of what you said is that your concern in regards to human rights, and that is, regardless of what the data says, whether crime has gone up or down during this administration, and I know you have some question marks even in regards to how the data is being processed, but clearly there is a sense that human right violations have also gone up during these 4 years. Is that correct? Am I paraphrasing your comment correctly?
It's absolutely correct because we see the complaints in the National Commissioner of Human Rights, but also we can find specific data that shows that, for example, the British Embassy paid for a study that try to understand what's going on with the migrants that came from Central and South America and passed through Mexico, in the idea and the desire to get to the United States. And they made a survey of more than 10,000 migrants, and the 100% of these migrants says that they paid National Guard and Army some bribery for pass through Mexico. So this is obviously a human rights violation. And for example, if we analyze what happened, I think 2-3 weeks ago in Tamaulipas, you can remember that 6 young men was in a car, and they saw the army. And in a country like this, in a state like Tamaulipas, you never know that if someone who claims to be the army is actually the army or is narcos. And they don't stop when they try to, when army asks them to stop. So they follow them and they start to shoot them, shot the car. Of course, of those 6 young men, 4 died at the moment. 1 was alive and came out of the car. And outside the car, the army finished him, shot him and killed him. So this was something that absolutely showed how this government through the army is violating and not only just one single violation, it's a systematic violation of human rights. And they try also to send the message that they was criminals, they had drugs and guns in the car, and thanks for the community that they don't allow to take the car and they take out the bodies of the young.
Because they wanted to, they were trying to hide the evidence that
exactly
they had executed these.
They try to blame
person.
the young men, and this is something that it's really shameful for this government, and for a government that claims every single day that in Mexico we don't have human rights violation.
Let me ask you this. I'm sure you've been following very closely the positions by some U.S. legislators that Mexico's criminal organizations, due to their the violence that they produce against the population in particular, and the fact that they are exporting fentanyl, which is resulting in the death of hundreds of thousands of American citizens, that these organizations should be classified by the State Department as terrorist groups. Now, there's been a big debate. There's been the U.S. government, at least the State Department, has come out and said that they don't believe that this is the best solution or it would improve cooperation. But there has been also some analysts who said that, the law that when you classify an organization as a terrorist group, there's different types of legislation that kicks in, especially in the United States, that would make it perhaps easier to go after organizations, banks, people who are supporting these criminal organizations in Mexico, who would now be aiding a terrorist group and not just a organized crime or drug trafficking organization. I mean, what is your position in regards to this possibility?
Well, first, talk about how easily made for United States to fight this problem. And then if it's possible that that kind of law pass or don't pass. I don't think will pass because there are no criteria for, say, if you look for the law in United States and what are the criteria for called some organization or recognize some organization as terrorist. I think there are some specific areas where can be very effective, because when you have the opportunity to classify some specific activity as terrorism, you can stop the money, the flow of the money, and you can investigate easily some specific relationship between some specific person with some specific groups. So in that kind of way could be really effective. We have to remember that the first thing that made very powerful the criminals is because they have a lot of money. They have a lot of money, and this money could buy person, could buy ideas, could buy guns, could buy a lot of things. So if you can stop the flow of the money, you can have some results. It's not enough because you have to have very good cooperation. And if you don't have enough cooperation in this side of the border, you just can freeze the money there. But by the other hand, the problem of define as a criminal organization as terrorism is you have to show that they have an ideology, and they don't have an ideology. The logic that a criminal group follow-ups is money.
Right. Yeah.
They don't care if this some specific religion or some specific politics, or there are some specific ideas. So for this reason, also could be harder to prove in the prosecutor office that someone is involved in a terrorist activity. So for me, there are some, maybe the thing should be a third way. And the third way is to define and clarify how, not as Mexico, not as United States, but at least as continent, should fight against organized crime. Because one of the most important things is right now organized crime, the Mexican organized crime is involved with the Colombians, with the Brazilians, with the Venezuelans, and with the United States.
Yeah. I have one last question. I'm literally running out of time, and I'm sorry I'm asking you this question to the very end. What is your main concern regarding security issues in Mexico as Andrés Manuel Lopez Obrador faces his last year and a half as president? What worries you the most?
For me, the most worrying thing is the participation of the organized crime in the electoral process. Because if you have organized crime that is paying or is involving actively in support some specific party or some specific candidate, you have an owner. So maybe you want a state, maybe you want a municipality, maybe you want a space in the Senate or in the Congress, but you have an owner. And this is an owner that don't care about Mexico. They care about money. So they will do what they have to do for have more money. But at the end, we as citizens will pay the possibility that they have. And if you analyze the data of the election in 2021 and 2022, the organized crime was one of the main actors that participate and support Morena, the party of the president, so they can win a lot of states in the Pacific area. And for me, this is something that we as Mexican, we have to be really concerned because could change the future of our country.
Wow, we definitely have to be paying attention to that. I really enjoy talking to you again, and I really appreciate you joining us this weekend. Francisco Rivas, he is the General Director of the National Citizens Observatory. It's always great to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Always thank you to you.
Thank you. We're going